Hey, New Life Church. My name is Dale Hall, and I'm one of the pastors at our Greater Little Rock campus. And with me today is my daughter. And her name is Brianna, and I wanted to do this a little bit different in our Devo time here. Is I want to kind of interview her. And so I'm going to invite you to join our conversation. And what we're talking about is anxiety. We've been talking about physical health. Now we're talking about emotional wellness. And so anxiety is kind of the topic. And I hear it a lot in people. And we use that term and that phrase anxiety a lot, especially in our culture. And so we're going to talk about it today because Brianna's has been struggling or has worked through that over the years. And so whenever I was asked to do this, I thought I'm going to interview her and get her wisdom because she has walked it out firsthand and personally. And so I want you to welcome my daughter, Brianna. Hey, girl. Hi. So when we talk about anxiety, first off, for you, how would you define anxiety?
I would define it of like worrying, nervousness, uneasy, fear of things out of my control.
Okay. So what times or, actually I know firsthand as your dad that I didn't recognize it over times, even at church when you would come into the lobby or into the auditorium, a lot of people, that you experience social anxiety. So like what are some other experiences, or like how do you physically feel, or what does you experience? How can you describe that, or what patterns or?
So some feelings I feel when I experience anxiety would be almost like I'm suffocating or someone's sitting on my chest, heart racing, like a lump in my throat. And then I feel most anxiety and triggers for me would be when things are out of my control. Current situations that I'm in trigger past traumas, large crowds like church, being put on the spot like this, in seasons of waiting, or even small things like someone changing plans.
Okay. Now, when dealing with anxiety and over the years, because this has been, because you're 30, and I know you don't look it, but yes, you're 30, just got married, and it got to a point where you went to counseling on that. And I know some people do, don't you, the stigma behind it, but you went and it really did a lot in your life. And so what was your experience with like counseling or medication? Did it help? Did it not? How did that help you process through anxiety?
So in 2013, I decided to go see a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with all the anxieties and then also depression. I was put on anxiety medication and antidepressant. After 6 or 7 weeks of being on medications, I felt fixed. And then I started seeing a therapist and really unpacking my life and realized that I had a lot of trauma and a lot of things I needed to deal with and learn how to cope with. And during that time I was on my medication, but in 2016 I kind of realized that I had taken my diagnosis and like claimed it as my identity of like I'd always have to be on medication to live this normal life. So in 2016 I started to talk to my psychiatrist and my therapist about coming off medication and applying what I had learned in therapy and how to cope and triggers and live life without medication while applying what I had learned in therapy. And in 2017, I was able to get off medication, and I have been on medication since then.
And because of that moment is that you now live free from those medications. And what did you do?
I went and got a tattoo the day after my last time taking medications that says "Live Free."
Yes, she did. So that's great. So she celebrates that. So there you go.
Yep.
We won't get into that topic anymore. So I want to kind of, there's so much that we can talk about here, even in regards to, just very quickly, is people have a misnomer about therapy. And just because you always say talk therapy isn't enough. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? Is just like you don't just go to a therapist and talk?
So I went to CBT therapy,
meaning
cognitive behavioral therapy, and I learned how to deal with my thoughts and like process my thoughts, because you don't feel anxiety until you think those thoughts. So you have to figure things out up here and learn how to cope with that in order to truly cope with the anxiety.
So let me segue into that, is because talking through all this, so now in your faith, because we get into it and we don't want to just get into the science and just the humanism of it, but as your faith, what have you learned how to walk in peace and manage this anxiety, and how your faith comes in? Because a verse that really meant a lot that you shared with me, how does that correlate with what you just talked about of your thinking and stuff?
So originally I thought my anxiety stemmed from a lack of a relationship with the Lord, but as I dug deeper I realized it came from a lack of trust in the Lord, and so I really just had to start to understand what truly trusting in the Lord meant. And that meant for me of waking up in the morning and saying, I trust you with this. I mean, small things. Going to coffee with people was out of my comfort zone, and it can be bigger, it can be small. And I learned the biggest thing was I had to trust the Lord. He cared more about my situation or my anxiety that I was feeling than I did. And I kept trying to pick it back up. And until I truly learned to trust Him with my whole life, not parts of my life, I couldn't really experience that peace, because I wasn't giving Him all of me. I wasn't trusting Him, which comes to the verse that I really stood on still do to this day, is you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you, which is Isaiah 26:30. You can't experience peace without the trust.
It's huge. It's huge. Well, I want to just keep talking about this, but we can't. We need to go. So I hope just a little bit of this and of Brianna's story, you might be able to relate with her. She's on Facebook, Instagram. She talks to a lot of different people. Myself, we'd love to talk about it further. But we just want you to be encouraged, just even with that verse that she talked about, is having in your mind that peace comes through being steadfast in Christ and by trusting in Him. So today we just pray that you will trust in the Lord with all your heart, and you don't lean on your understanding. That's what Proverbs says. But in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your paths. So we just pray that God blesses you, keeps you in peace. May you walk in peace and not be overwhelmed by anxiety in your life and in stress. All right? God bless y'all. Thanks for joining. Have a blessed day.